Well, you heard this BS before about the dollar collapse coming. The dollar collapse was coming in 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. Per Pastor Lindsey Williams, the 501c that has the elite guy, right? It's one of the guys. Plenty of people saying this type of stuff. Also, what was it? Chapman was another one. Remember him? Anyway, well, first off, let me just say this. It looks like Donald Trump's solidly in his seat to be president of the United States. But he himself is acknowledging that there's going to be major collapses in the economy because we're already in a bubble, right? Now, I'm going to give you some common sense on this because even when things quote unquote collapse by the numbers, that does not necessarily mean there's a real collapse in the economy because not everything is measured. Like for instance, even in Argentina, when things collapsed, when they had a problem with their currency, there was an economy that was always going. So that's the other thing is you got to keep with cottage industry, doing stuff on your own, stay busy, whatever it is, something, whatever you're good at, because they're not going to be able to measure this and say it's part of the GDP because maybe you're not going to make a formal sale that's on the books per se, and you maybe just be doing direct barter trade or whatever, right? Or you're doing things for yourself that have an economic benefit, and it's not going to show up on anywhere. So don't get like lost in this doom, because I'm not pushing the doom and gloom here, but I'm pushing your reality, and I'm going to state why this is going to happen, because there's something else that's come up that's a major change, and I don't know if anybody's bringing it up. But first off, it looks like Donald Trump is solidly in the seat. The millennials have made about a 36% swing towards Trump away from Hillary Clinton. The millennials, which gives me a lot more faith in the millennials because I know you constantly see on Alex Jones' show, or what is that? I forgot that guy that's on there is always making the videos with interviewing a millennial, doesn't know who the vice president is, doesn't know what the heck when the Civil War was, who was fought against, who we fought against in 1776, or against the British, and they're constantly harping on the millennials that they don't know a damn thing, but obviously a number of them do. So these are the millennials. They're all jumping on the bandwagon. Yeah, I know these are a little bit younger than millennials, but they could be millennials too. Not old enough to vote, but they're jumping on the Trump bandwagon, which is a couple motorcycles here attached together. So Trump looks like he's solidly in for the presidency. Now the other thing is, I think they're going to keep the markets going up between now and the election because the powers that be really want Hillary in. And statistically speaking, I talked about this before, 19 out of the last 22 election cycles were predicted by the direction of the market. If the market was going down, the incumbent party lost. If the market was going up, the incumbent party won. So they want to keep a Democrat, the powers that be want to keep a Democrat in there, and you know that the markets are really controlled by Federal Reserve policy, the banksters, right? So I think they're going to go up, and when he gets in office, they're going to go down. Now, Trump is also talking, and many times he's dropped hints about there's a bubble, there's a bubble, there's a bubble. Actually, some of the people who are going to get affected the most are going to be the retirees. I mean, some of the retirees are pretty active right now. I mean, I got a lot of respect for this granny on a Harley or whatever she's on, electric glide. But a lot of people are just out there playing golf, and they're dumb to the world. They just think, they got my investments in mind. But I can tell you right now that if there ever is a real financial calamity, these brokers, if they're not getting paid too, or they're just putting up with a lot of shit, they're just going to close their doors and walk away. I mean, it could be that bad. I mean, we've had things happen in the 30s where there was a banking collapse, right? Now it's guaranteed by the FDIC, and I know you know that there's not enough money to guarantee all the bank accounts from the FDIC, but I think the bank accounts are fairly safe. But the problem is where most people really have the bulk of their money is in these brokerage accounts. And the brokerage accounts are not guaranteed by the FDIC, period. And a lot of these accounts also are like, I forget what you call those again, like, it's like you have an underlying asset, supposedly like agriculture or something like that, and like, the Rogers Agricultural Index, whatever, and you don't even know what the hell's in them. The exchange-traded funds, exchange-traded, hedge funds, whatever the heck you call them. I forgot the hell you call them. I haven't been into this shit in a while. But you know what I mean. Actually, the authorities actually are very much wondering, or not wondering, or very suspicious of actually what's in a lot of these ETFs that are being sold on the marketplace that a lot of people are invested in. I think there's a lot of not just double counted assets, not just triple counted assets, but quadruple, 10 times, 50 times over counted assets, whereby, like we all know about the silver SLV ETF is a load of it. It's a paper silver thing. It's not backed by silver. It's impossible. I don't know how they can even be paying the brokers. But I didn't get onto yet why the dollar is actually going to collapse, or not totally collapse. I mean, I'm not saying that the dollar is not going to be the currency in a medium of exchange in this country. If I don't know when it would be replaced, it's going to be the currency of this country for a long time. I think I don't know about 50 years from now, but let's say at least 5 years for sure. Okay, guaranteed. Okay, it's not going to go away. But the reason things are teetering, just like this guy lifting a weight, the Federal Reserve is doing everything in its power to make things look good. They're playing everything with smoke and mirrors. I think their game is, Trump's going to get in there. He's going to say, "Make America great," and they're going to pull the rug out from underneath the economy just to throw mud at Trump. But Trump's kind of warning about things. But here's the clincher. Here's what I'm really driving at: why the dollar's going to collapse. Right now, there's kind of like an informal political war between Saudi and the United States government and the United States. I highly suspect, as the Russians were saying, that the oil was brought down in price by Saudi, pumping out extra oil and flooding the market with oil with supply during a time when there was very much diminished economic output in China. The building industry was collapsed in China and also in Europe. All the economies throughout the world are actually in the doldrums at that time. And instead of keeping the price up, which was actually the OPEC charter per se, OPEC was actually, put together. The cartel was actually put together to keep the price up during low demand times by cutting production. What did Saudi do? They did the exact opposite. During low demand times, when the economy was bad, they actually cut production. They cut production. Now I'm showing an American Native Indian here for a reason, because I think we're going full circle all the way back to this. To cut to the chase where I'm getting to eventually. But Saudi cut production during a time which they should not have cut production, because that's what OPEC was supposed to be for. They increased production. They did not cut production. I meant to say, they did not. What they were supposed to do, and that's why OPEC was created during times of lower economic activity, when there's less demand for oil. Their thing with OPEC, the whole reason it was formed was keep the price up by cutting production. They did the exact opposite. Now, I don't think the United States. Now, some people say they did it to wipe out the shale oil industry in the United States. Maybe, and maybe that's another point of contention between the United States and Saudi. But I think it was in cooperation with the United States to slow down the military expansionary ambitions of Vladimir Putin, because he does not have the budget to freaking improve or enhance his military that like he wants to. So that's why they did it, right? And I think Russia's completely correct about that. I think they're 110% correct about that. It may not be the only reason, but I think that actually was the main reason. Actually, the reason the USSR collapsed in the 80s was over the oil price collapse, and they couldn't keep up with the USA in military expenditure, and all of a sudden it just collapsed. Now, today, I think the USA is on the verge of collapse. We're the ones that are blowing smoke and mirrors, and we're going to go back to probably full circle to a more primitive time if we're going to survive. I mean, that's where I think it's really going. That freaking bad. I don't even know if the internet's going to be around, for crying out loud. That's what I'm thinking. So you might as well freaking just think about this shit ahead of time. And, it's not doom and gloom. It's just going full circle. Life's a cycle, and that's what the hell it is. But you know what's going on now? Here's another contention where I realized that the there's bad blood between the U.S. government and the Saudi royal family is that the U.S. Congress has allowed to I think it was to sue the families of 911, 911 2001 when the Twin Towers came down, to actually sue the Saudis for their involvement in it, in that catastrophe when the planes hit those buildings. Now, the Saudis, so in other words, the Saudis are in turn publicizing through other media in their country that the U.S. government itself was behind 911 and that they were using it as a means of having a perpetual war on quote unquote terrorism. To actually, a lot of it was to protect the heroin trade in Afghanistan. So these are like serious arguments between the Saudis and the U.S. government, Saudi family and the U.S. government. Now, the only option I think Saudi has to survive, because they're burning through their cash reserves left and right, they're running like deficits now because the oil price is so damn low that they are actually running through their reserves, their reserves that they have invested in the U.S. Treasuries. The only way they're going to survive is to sell oil to China. Right now, China is getting oil from Russia, partly too, more from oil from Russia than the U.S. Russia, almost said USSR, but the Russian country, than Saudi. It used to be the other way around. In order to sell oil to China, China will not accept U.S. dollars. Will not pay for U.S. dollars, will not pay in U.S. dollars. So what Saudi has to do is accept the Chinese yuan or an SDR based upon the Chinese yuan and some Asian currencies and gold. They have to totally avoid the U.S. dollar. That is Chinese policy. So Saudi is seriously considering just abandoning totally the U.S. dollar completely and just looking at this is the only way we can survive. It's like, these people were all in bed with each other originally, but the whole freaking agreement between the Saudi family and the U.S. government and, and an elite in the West has broken down. Now, I think the way they're going to backstab Saudi is this is why they're allowing Obama to make the deal with Iran to have the nuclear agreement. So Iran's going to be nuclear armed. Saudi's looking for nuclear arms. I think they both got nuclear arms, but they don't have that many. They're just waiting to build up their stockpiles. And eventually it's going to wind up in a major conflagration whereby a large percentage of the oil is going to be taken off the market. And you're going to see oil go right through some astronomical height, temporarily, not forever, because other places in the world have oil. And that'll cause gold to go way up and silver to go up to major heights. It's not going to last like that forever, but it's going to be a spike that is going to astound everybody. I think that's going to be the catalyst. But that is actually why the dollar is going to be breaking down, because the whole dollar is based upon OPEC oil. And now you're looking at the main lead country of OPEC oil having to be forced to go to China to sell their oil, and China will not use any dollars in that exchange. It has to be Chinese yuan or special drawing rights of Asian currencies, including the yuan and gold. That's it. No dollars involved. So what the hell? Then what happens to all these dollars that are floating around, that are out in the international economy or have been invested in? The Saudis are burning through and spending right now. Where's that money going to come back? It's going to come back domestically. Eventually, we're probably going to have extremely high inflation. Now, if there's a war between Iran and Saudi, because Iran now, I think Iran already has nukes. I know I've heard this from military circles before, that they already have them. It's not a matter of they already have them. They're just waiting for getting more. Saudi, I think, has them too. They're the Shiite and the Sunni divide. They're waiting for the war to end all wars, basically. And when that happens, that's going to be a major percentage of the oil taken off the market. Remember what happened even in Libya? Libya, when they had the war with Gaddafi, that was only about 1% or a little over 1% of the global oil supply was temporarily taken off the market. That was when we had the super spike in oil. And also, well, it was a little after that. There was somewhat of a spike then. I think it went up to 120 something a barrel then also. But we had the super spike in silver and gold and platinum and palladium around that time. That was in early 2011, right? I think it was. So, and then it collapsed after the war was over. So I think I've always been saying a major conflagration in the Middle East is going to be the thing that's actually going to send the price way up. The thing is, this is going to happen next week, and I don't think anything's really major. I think this summer is going to be pretty lousy for the metals, because typically it is. They might start taking off a little bit in September, but I think the markets are going to be going up along with the metals in September. And I think they're going to wait till Trump gets in office to really pull the rug out from underneath the economy just to make them look bad. And that's when, things are going to start rolling like dominoes. So, nobody's prepared for this shit for the most part. For the most part, people are, they're like, don't think negative thoughts and you're doom and gloomer. I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. Do whatever you want. I'm just telling you, like, this is pure logic. It's not. And like I said, the numbers don't always reflect exactly what's going on in the economy. Like, for instance, if I decided to, and I did this already some years ago, if I decided to buy like, several $100s worth of roofing materials and do my own roof, well, guess what? I mean, I made a sale for $700 of materials to Lowe's and bought the roofing materials and put the shingles up, and I got the double, underlayments and stuff. But what? I deprived a roofer of, thousands of dollars of income. And you'll say, well, the GDP was, only a small percentage, when you're looking at that microcosm, because you say maybe that roof could have cost $5,000 and it cost, $800, right? So the GDP was $800 because that's what shows up on the books. But the actual net result was a $5,000 roof. Because some people, that's what I mean, that's what's going to happen in the economy. In other words, people are just going to have to roll up their sleeves and do shit on their own. And it's not necessarily going to be a worst time. It's not necessarily going to be like that, but it's going to be like you're probably going to have to be much more self-sufficient, like, the old log cabin on the frontier, that type of steel with the wood-burning stove and all that stuff. So, but I think this is a very much a realistic scenario. There is a major break between the U.S. government and Saudi. I think there originally was, there was decades of cooperation before. And I think they originally brought down the price of oil. Not so, I know the Saudis had an interest of bringing that down, the shale oil industry, but I don't think that was the whole deal. Because they'd be making more money doing less if the price was higher. See, that's the whole charter behind OPEC. The whole charter behind OPEC was let's not compete with each other by producing too much oil that brings the price of oil down too far that we, are, cutting our revenue off because we're having price wars with each other. So we collude together to keep production at a certain level, and when the demand is low for oil, we bring down production to keep the price high, so we don't have to do that much to get the same amount of money. So I don't think, when Saudi brought down the price of oil by going balls to the wall with production of oil and flooding the market during low demand and low economic output throughout the world, they did it at the behest of the U.S. government to get at Russia. I'm almost 110% sure of that. I think the Russians are right at that, and they didn't want. And that's probably good because Putin does have some very serious expansionary policies, and he's very aggressive. And I know NATO is too. I know they're both evil. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but and probably the government in the U.S. is mishandling Putin too. I mean, the guy's a patriot, and he shouldn't be. I know Putin is not like this wonderful guy that these morons think he is all the time, but I don't want to insult the guy, but I'm not playing Secretary of State here when I'm talking, you know. But I'm saying is he is a patriot. He is a patriot. And that's probably more than we could say about some of our leaders, that's for sure. But let me put it to you this way. He's a patriot for the other guys, not us, though. That's a problem. But the thing is, uh, they brought down the price of oil in Saudi in cooperation with the U.S. government to hurt Russia financially, economically, so they could not add more to their military and all these wonderful new technologies they want to expand with and improve their air force, their tank fleet, and all this other garbage. Well, it worked. It worked. But the problem is, Saudi's in such a hurt locker right now that they're thinking of trading, they're thinking of making a deal with China instead of the USA just for their survival. But where they're getting dirt thrown at them right in their face, and it's not actually per the elite, it's the Congress voted this in sympathy with the 911 survivors, that the 911 survivors can sue the Saudi family for 911. Now that was kind of an unexpected twist because the elite really had no say in that. That came from Congress, and I think it's just. But the survivors ought to be able to sue the freaking the elite in this country, including like George Bush. Was probably involved in this crap. I think he knew all about this stuff. But the problem is now that they threw that dirt on the Saudi family, which is justifiable. Saudi family is the biggest exporter of terrorism in the world. But it was fine when they're all working together with the U.S. government. Well, when they got exposed, what happened is they went and said, well, no. It's like one crook talking to the other crook. The other crook is blaming the other guy. And the Saudi family's now saying, no, the U.S. government did 911. They're publicizing that. So there's a major freaking split there. And considering that Saudi is OPEC, without Saudi, there is no OPEC. And without OPEC, there is no petrodollar. What does that mean? It doesn't mean it's going to happen in the next 48 hours or 72 hours. But you can see the writing on the wall. And I'm coming from pure logic, not freaking doom and gloom. And like I told you, if all the numbers in the economy goes down and all these worthless paper pushers in the government go broke and they don't have jobs and the Bureau of Land Management has to freaking go hunt their own freaking animals for food like the ranchers do or something, well, too bad. I look at it like that. You know what? I don't give a shit. I mean, actually, it's great that if it would happen, it'd probably be good. Because, we got so much freaking people sitting on their ass in this country doing nothing that, maybe it's time for a real change. Not an Obama change, not a Clinton change, but maybe a change back to the ways of the old, real Americans in this country, the natives that lived here before us. And, I'm not some starry-eyed idealist. I know not all the natives were, like, really nice. But there were people like the Delaware American Native Indians who helped George Washington, who helped the Revolutionary cause, and without them we would have never been the United States nation in the first place, who were totally backstabbed and betrayed by the U.S. government later on. Because you know what was supposed to happen? It was actually Chief White Eyes. He was killed by U.S. agents, and his white wife, his Caucasian wife, 10 years later killed by the colonist agents. The Delaware Indian Americans, I'm saying Indian because, I'm used to using the word Indian. It's like the Native Americans, whatever. But I don't mean nothing bad by Indian. But the Delaware Indians during the time of 1776 that helped the George Washington. Without them, we would have never had an American Revolution. Would have failed. There's no doubt about it. When they were ambushing the British in the woods, the Delaware Indians were doing far more than that than the colonists. The Delaware Indians were doing almost all the freaking work, got none of the credit. But what they were supposed to get in exchange for it was the 14th state, which would be around present-day Ohio. That was supposed to be a Delaware Indian state for American Native Indians. That would be part of the new United States. or a confederation of the United States, because actually back then each state was pretty much autonomous. The central power wasn't that strong. But as usual, you know, the New World Order was well and alive even in the colonies way back when. Bunch of backstabbers. So, I don't know. Well, to tell you the truth, if there's actually a collapse of civilization, well, that's going to be the end of the freaking power of the white man, that's for sure. I'm white too, but I mean, I believe in fair play, man, all the way. And, the thing is, when this happens, it's just going to be a major change. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It's just going to be a new, something's bad's going to happen, and out of that, the phoenix will rise and things will begin anew. That's exactly what happens. I mean, every time, to give an example, the American Indians used to do this all the time. I call them Indians instead of American natives, but that's what I call them, man. I mean, none of an insult. But they used to do it all the time, even with the forest. They used to burn the low underbrush, not the main trees, to keep the growth healthy, to keep the forest healthy. They used to actually burn the plains sometimes so they would get new grass growing so the buffalo can eat the grass. They actually practice wildlife management and ecological management too. A lot of people don't know that. So, I mean, sometimes when you destroy something, you bring it about something new that's good. As long as not the evil bastards don't get their foot in there, and when something's destroyed, like the Hegelian concept, they come in and bring down their draconian rules because they want to control people. Actually, I like the way the freaking Native American Indians did shit. There were no controls. The hell with the rules. This is our land. It's everybody's land. Somebody doesn't have enough food, you give them some food. You know what I mean? We all share. Is that socialism? No, that's actually freaking the way Jesus taught people to be, right? The real Jesus, not the religious kooks that follow Jesus and say I'm saved and act like a phony baloney and then do all the wrong shit. Anyway, I think a lot of the American Native Indians are more on the thing with Jesus anyway. But anyway, I just got to tell you this. This guy here with the weights, this is kind of like what's going on with the economy, man. They're propping it up with freaking phony web bots trading with each other to make the markets look good. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's already done. It's already done. I mean, the biggest employer in the country is the freaking government. What the hell do they do? Push paper? Ruin people's lives with regulations and bullshit? Think like they're God and they walk around no matter who the hell they are. They could be the dog catcher, for crying out loud. Doesn't matter. What do? They don't do anything good for anybody. So, I mean, if all that shit goes out on the wayside, who cares? I mean, to me, it's fine. So anyway, just want to, and again, the real reason to sum it up again. All right, number one, the millennials did a 36% swing per statistics, the latest polls, to Trump. The millennials are making it more solidly for Trump, which gives me more faith in the younger generation, because I was beginning to wonder, I'm looking at all these things from Alex Jones and that Dice guy, whatever the hell it is, does those interviews. I'm like, makes them all look like a bunch of idiots. They're not all stupid, No, they just making them look stupid. The other thing is, Saudis got a major break with the United States now over, issues with 911 and also issues with they're faced with, where if they don't trade with China and sell China oil, they're going under. And the only money they're going to get from China in exchange for the oil is going to be Chinese yuan or an SDR based upon yuan, other Asian currencies, and gold. They'll be avoiding the dollar completely. And that means goodbye OPEC, and with goodbye OPEC, goodbye petrodollar, and maybe the dollar's not going to not be the medium of exchange in this country, but it's going to have a lot more diminished. It's going to have greatly diminished purchasing power, which means inflation, because those dollars that are being held abroad by the OPEC nations are going to come back here to roost, and there's nothing they can do about it. It's going to be like an avalanche. So, and this is not doom and gloom. I'm just telling you reality. But then again, if things go like this, like I said, I gave you an example, like me putting on the roof of the house, right? I deprive somebody of $5,000 worth of income, and I only put $800 into the GDP because I bought the materials, right? Uh, but the net effect is I still got a freaking brand new roof, and I probably did it better than those guys would have ever done anyway, right? So I mean, that's kind of how it is. And like you have the daycare centers. The daycare centers are pulling in more per year than colleges. A daycare center, when you send a little kid to a daycare center, they're caught charging more money than a freaking university now. That's actually exceeded on average. Daycare centers have exceeded the cost of a university per year. Well, say you can't afford to send your kid to a daycare center and the wife doesn't have a job or some bullshit, right? She watches her kid. She teaches her kid way better than the daycare center. She watches her kid way better than the daycare center. She freaking does a much better job caring for her kid than the daycare center. And on the GDP on the economy shows all this lost revenue because the daycare centers are going broke, and that's all part of the GDP. But the reality of the net effect is, the benefit to people is freaking far better. So don't look at the numbers and get too freaked out about the numbers all the time. Look at the reality, and the reality situation is, we're probably gonna have some hyperinflation. So number one, grow food. Don't just invest in silver. And remember, beans, bullets, and bacon, and fuel, firepower, and what else is out there? Fuel and firepower. Forgot. There's another F. Forgot what it was again. But yeah, just remember all the essentials, and the essentials are what you need. Don't go worrying about your freaking Netflix on your cell phone. Ugh. That is BS fluff. And I am an advocate of information by the internet, but actually solid information that's actually benefit to people, and not stuff that is just diarrhea, pure fluff that doesn't help people. In other words, I like putting out videos on how to freaking do stuff or how to make something last a little longer or get a little life out of something. And I'm giving you straight scoop about this economic reality that is coming our way. And one of the ways to protect your economic reality is through retaining and holding that silver until the crisis actually does arrive, because the silver should be very high, especially if oil goes very high and due to a conflagration in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi. Okay, so I did the long video here. I'm sorry, some people don't like long videos, but you know what? I don't know how the hell to tell you all this shit inside of 2 seconds. I'm talking as fast and as clear as possible, and I'm giving you accurate information. And I mean, I could put a 2-minute soundbite out there, but you're not getting the whole damn thing then. You're not getting the whole damn thing. So I'm trying to, and I know I repeat myself sometimes, but I do it for a reason, because it's sometimes people do miss it. There's like so much percentage get it hear it the first time, and there's another percentage that get more of it the second time. That's why I deliberately repeat myself. I don't do that out of, I'm forgetting to tell you something. I do that for a reason. That's kind of a communication teaching skill that you have to use to repeat something once in a while. And there's a few people get aggravated at that, but I don't do that because I forgot I said it before. There's a reason for it. I know there's some people get it the first time, probably 70% get it the first time, but then the second time it's like 90% get it, then maybe third time 97% get it. So that's why I repeat it. No, it's not due to me forgetting that I said something. Anyway, over and out, and good luck with all this bullshit, and we're going to go on to some other subjects after this garbage, and more practical know-how things versus, hopefully I did not push doom and gloom here, because I'm not pushing doom and gloom. I'm pushing reality and solutions to the reality, and hope and a positive attitude is your biggest weapons against the garbage that's coming against us.